I know. So
Okay,
I'll be reading for Paulette. Fortunately, she couldn't be here today. She wishes she could, and these are her opening statements. Thank you, Peter, for planning this fabulous Poem-a-Thon in the Whittier Home for Amesbury's much-loved Open Studios weekend. And thank you for including me among the readers here today. Poetry uses imagery to evoke emotion. While reading or listening, the imagery and evoked emotion create art in our minds. Whittier is well known for his poetry supporting the abolition of slavery and support of women's rights. He also loved and was inspired by the natural world. I will first read 2 Whittier poems which exemplify this. And then she says, I'll mention a folk custom believed or followed in many European countries and in the U.S. The bees, with hives on the property, must be told about a death in the household. If not, the bees might leave the hive, or more family tragedy may strike. This is called Telling the Bees by Whittier. Here is the place, right over the hill, runs the path I took. You can see the gap in the old wall still, and the stepping stones in the shallow brook. There is the house, with the gate red-barred, and the poplars tall. I can see it all now. The slant-wise rain of light through the leaves, the sundown's blaze on her window pane, the bloom of her roses under the eaves, just the same as a month before. The house and the trees, the barn's brown gable, the vine by the door. Nothing changed but the hives of bees before them, under the garden wall, forward and back, went drearily, singing the chore girls small, draping each hive with a shred of black. Trembling, I listened. The summer sun had the chill of snow, for I knew she was telling the bees of one gone on the journey we all must go. Then I said to myself, my Mary weeps for the dead today. Haply her blind old grandsire sleeps, the fret and the pain of his age away. But her dog whined low on the doorway sill, with his cane to his chin. Softly the dark green hemlocks whisper, high above the spires of yellowing larches, show where the woodpecker and home-loving crow and jay and nuthatch winter's threat defy. O gracious beauty ever new and old, O sights and sounds of nature, doubly dear, when the low sunshine wands the closing year. O snow-blown fields and waves of arctic cold. Close to my heart I fold each lovely thing the sweet day yields, and, not disconsolate, with the calm patience of the woods, I wait for leaf and blossom when God gives spring. I think I just read the end of a different poem. It sounded good, anyway.
Yes.
Okay, this is a poem by our late great Poet Laureate, Lainie Senechal. I want to fall, let go of everything. Like last lazy leaf of laurel, drift aimlessly, no desire to soar with eagles. Rather a feather from wingtip relinquished to zigzag through space on slightest zephyr. I want to fall through layers of light, sunrise to sunset, steadily deepening into dark, a languid meteor sparkling slowly to earth, holding on to nothing, never heeding where I land, on softest snow of season, among spring's cheery crocus, with summer's daily dandelions, along autumn's silent stream. For I am all of this, and from all I have been released.
Okay, can you take just...
It's the bees.
For those of you that just came in, Priscilla's not usually disorganized like this, but she's reading for two today because our second reader couldn't get here. And so Priscilla's reading her poetry as well.
I'm reading for her notes that I haven't seen before. This one is, I believe, a trolley, and it's called The Lost Pail. A day of sun and waves and sand, a day she spends beside her friend, a trusty pail in hand. A day of sun and waves and sand, a castle moat that will not stand once the tide rolls in to end a day of sun and waves and sand, a day she spends beside her friend. Here's the picture. And this is from a painting that Paulette painted. And then we have another Paulette Demers Turco is her name, from Newburyport. Sunset on Plum Island Marsh. Without a bow, the gilded globe has slipped below the distant edge of this salt marsh, a silent, varied show. Its remnant rays illuminate a sky of cumulus clouds that drifted in, pure white, for hours above the summer crowds, now hinting pink and lavender and a purplish blue reflected in the brackish stream, receding as on cue. Around the curve, a great blue heron stands, regal as a king. A swarm of swallows just flit by for insects on the wing. Red-winged blackbirds nestle, hidden in the lush green brush. All prepare for what will come, dusk and then a hush. And that's the picture. So now I will go on to the packet that I prepared. Hopefully I'll do a better job.
You do just fine.
I would also like to thank Peter and Chris and the Whittier Home Association for inviting me here to read today. It's an honor. I'm going to read a Stephen Wagner poem first. It's called, and Stephen was our former poet laureate who passed away in 2019. Is it, I think?
18 or 19.
That young man, he was fabulous. And he went to all of the special ceremonies in Amesbury and wrote a poem for each of them. And then he also went to all the important
Amesbury's treasures.
treasure spots in Amesbury and wrote poems for those. This is called Whittier Grave Rededication. Not far from Spruce Ave in Union Cemetery lies a great seer. He is there with parents, siblings, and others beneath a stone veneer. We gather at their graves, at the markers which mark that they were here, and tend the ground around them, maintaining them through the years, that we may better remember them all. But more so than any other, it is the words of John Greenleaf Whittier, to humankind a brother, that we need to hear and rehear. For he spoke so bravely of freedom and equality, for race and gender in times of hatred and fear. He is gone now, but not gone at all, so long as we speak the words to call him near. To the next 100 years of great graveside maintenance, as the sign above the stones recounts, with grave importance, it does announce, here lies Whittier, his truth stands loud and clear. Now this is a poem by John Greenleaf Whittier.
We have to come right up. Let's do yes.
Oh, okay.
This is called The Rendition, and I looked this poem up and chose it after November 5th. I just had to vent a little, as John Greenleaf Whittier did. It's called The Rendition. I heard the train's shrill whistle call, I saw an earnest look beseech, and rather by the look than speech my neighbor told me all. And as I thought of liberty, marched handcuffed down that sordid street, the solid earth beneath my feet reeled fluid as the sea. I felt a sense of bitter loss, a shame, tearless grief, and stifling wrath, and loathing fear, as if my path a serpent stretched across. All love of home, all pride of place, all generous confidence and trust, sank smothering in that deep disgust and anguish of disgrace. Down on my native hills of June, and home's green quiet, hiding all, fell sudden darkness, like the fall of midnight upon noon. And law, an unloosed maniac, strong, blood-drunken, through the blackness trod, hoarse shouting in the ear of God, the blasphemy of wrong. O Mother, from thy memories proud, thy old renown, dear Commonwealth, lend this dead air a breeze of health, and smite with stars this cloud. Mother of freedom, wise and brave, rise awful in thy strength. I said, Ah me, I spake but to the dead. I stood upon her grave. This is another Whittier poem called A Mystery. The river hemmed with leaning trees wound through its meadows green. A low blue line of mountains showed the open pines between. One sharp, tall peak above them all, clear into sunlight sprang. I saw the river of my dreams, the mountains that I sang. No clue of memory led me on, but well the ways I knew. A feeling of familiar things with every footstep grew. Not otherwise above its crag could lean the blasted pine. Not otherwise the maple hold aloft its red ensign. So up the long and shorn foothills the mountain road should creep, so green and low the meadow fold its red-haired kine asleep. The river wound as it should wind, their place the mountains took. The white torn fringes of their clouds wore no unwonted look. Yet ne'er before that river's rim was pressed by feet of mine. Never before mine eyes had crossed that broken mountain line. A presence, strange at once and known, walked with me as my guide. The skirts of some forgotten life trailed noiseless by my side. Was it a dim, remembered dream, or glimpse through eons of old? The secret which the mountains kept, the river never told. But from the vision ere it passed, a tender hope I drew, and, pleasant as a dawn of spring, the thought within me grew, that love would temper every change, and soften all surprise, and misty with the dreams of earth, the hills of heaven rise. A little more hopeful things.
That's lovely.
And now I'll read a poem of mine that has a little mystery in it too. It's called Skirting the Edge. Matted grasses sweep the rise of hill, tinted with ochres, umbers, grays, as if these lines were etched by Dürer or Van Eyck, with colors of the north. In sharp November air, which crisps our breath, our steady steps crunching underfoot, we traverse the slanted landscape. A single hawk accepts our presence, circles round us high above. Perhaps he thinks that we'll disturb a vole or mouse. So he'll abide as we go by, then angle in and pounce for an easy kill. Beyond the field, we skirt the edge, beside a tumbled wall, granite stones that once were neatly piled by farmers' calloused hands. Upended now, their purpose put aside, The boundary there defined displays a sign that says, "No trespassing, beware of dog." The only dog in sight is one we've come to see, the one we'd found another time, by chance. A prefab dog, or coyote, made of some synthetic stuff, a rough stand-in of flimsy tufts, yet good enough to fool the eye from far away in late-day shadows. We wonder who has placed him here, and why. We brush away some splintered grass nearby and see a wooden cross with cap and cup. An altar, offering, or monument? A tribute to a long-lost dog, a friend? The image sticks with us. Each time we trek this way, we have to check. The spirit in that scruffy statued hound, that haunted place, drawing us into that numinous space. Now another one of Lainie Senechal's poems, called Summer Moves On, and it's in the form of an ovejo, which is a Spanish form, I believe, and there's a repeat in it. Summer moves on. Black-eyed Susan puts on a show. Summers go. Cicadas sing season song. Time moves on. Corn grows sturdy and so tall. Soon comes fall. Languid days that to us call, August hours that give great joy, but these moments are quite coy. Summers go. Time moves on. Soon comes fall. And this is another one of mine from my little chapbook, which is here in the back.
Yes. We have a number of books back here from a lot of the poets who are here today.
Paulette and Lainie and myself and
yep.
Stephen, right?
And Steve, yeah.
Look, this is called Without Birds. Maple trees along the road are blown bare. A few shivering leaves remain intact, paper pale and thin in the pewter air. Fractured trunks twist up. Twigs etched in black hold empty nests. Quivering, they lean in the harsh wind. The sparrows won't be back. Seeking a hint of sun, in between cold gusts chilling their fragile bones, they've flown away to the promise of green. And even those who never think to roam hear the sweet song of a more temperate zone. This is another Stephen Wagner poem. And it's he wrote a bunch of poems called timesheets. He worked as a,
He was like a clerk in a company, I don't remember the name of the company, here in town, here in Amesbury.
and he always talked about the timesheets that everyone had to turn in.
They had to turn them into him.
Yeah.
And every Monday, he would write a poem that had the word timesheets in it,
Yeah.
just to remind them, send it around to everybody. And so they would be reminded to turn in their timesheets.
So he had, what, 2 or 3 books?
2 or 3 books of
Yeah.
timesheets poems, and they're
Yeah.
all here.
And they're wonderful. Wait till you hear this one. This is from Monday, October 8th, 2018. There is nothing quite like the geese. Invariably, I'm futzing around, somewhere at the side, back, or in front of the house in the late afternoon, fiddling with some small detail that needs adjustment or repair, and without fail, they fly over, both in the fall and the spring, again and again. They fly over me, and it would be beautiful enough just to see them, just to see them. But their calls cut right into me and liven my heart. something primal and timeless, a bridge to the ancients. Timesheets originally scratched into surfaces of mud, tar, and stone. He certainly made art out of
He did.
a mundane thing in an organization.
Yeah.
This is another one of my poems. How am I doing for time?
It's the time over there,
We got
on the end of.
Okay, good. This is called Coyote's World Diminishing. A late November afternoon, the few leaves left are barely moving, scant green slivers on tips of birch, white backs flashing like flags of surrender. The oak leaves, stalwart, still hang on. Most will stay the winter, proving they're more stubborn, tough as dirt. They'll persist in rusty splendor. The refuge road winds by the dunes, with rehab trails made fresh for viewing migrant birds. A people's perch affords a look at plumage, gender, of willets, herons, warblers, loons. Nearly all have flown from roostings, hidden in the shrinking marsh. Phragmites spread, a mute offender. We see no signs of fox, raccoon on our ride. Then, just cruising down the road, a coyote, searching. He zigzags back and forth, meanders by our car. A new faint moon tells us it's late. We're intruding on his mealtime. He sniffs, alert. Ribs showing. He skirts by our front fender. His habitat is not immune to roads and trails and cars encroaching. A man-made maze he must traverse, filled with birders and weekenders. And this is my last poem, and it's in honor of the Hat Museum, called Hats. I have her hats, most all of them, summer hats of straw and flowers, daisies, violets, roses, pinned to pastel-colored bands of ribbons, rakish hats of felt with pheasant's feathers, rust and brown for fall, silk and velvet cloches draped over an eye with bright brooches of rhinestone pearls or shiny silver. These were fit for Hollywood, or having tea at Mrs. Smith's. Bought new at Raymond's or Filene's, they were worn on Easter Sunday or for many spring occasions, to dress up to go to Boston on the L, have hot fudge sundaes. When I was 6 and 8 and 10, I used to love to try them on. Mom would let me have my fun. I'd play as being grown up like her, stylish and quite beautiful. I'd pretend and strut my stuff, posing in the mirror. She once took note and said, "You look good in hats." A rare compliment, I basked. When I turned 12, I was allowed to spend my savings, choose my own chapeau, a woven straw with bow, yellow flocks, and purple streamers. The next Sunday, she took my hand in hers. With her picture hat tipped just so, a jaunty pair, we strolled down the aisle in church. All eyes turned our way that day. We bowed our heads so humbly. Thank you all very much for this.
Thank you for both of you. Thank you for both of you.
You've done good.
We're going to have about a 2 or 3 minute break now. If anybody needs something to nibble or drink, it's through in the kitchen door there. We can get some food.
There's water, there's cider, there's grapes and brownies. There's some excellent brownies and some lemon bars, and help yourselves.
Okay, I'm pleased to announce Brian Riley, who's going to come and read to us next.
Yes.
Now? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
You're up, Brian.
It's exactly 12:30, so it's right.
My name is Brian Riley. I am a member of the Cultural Council here in town. We are having our open studio tours this weekend. I was invited to read here today, and I was very thrilled to accept the invitation. I am the first person responsible for the creation of the Poet Laureate post in Amesbury. 2015, I went to the then mayor, I think it was Gray, and said, we need a Poet Laureate. He said, I fail to see the urgency. Well, I said, Whittier spent the latter part of his life here. Frost had a summer home here. We have a thriving arts community, and the 350th anniversary is coming up. We need a Poet Laureate. So he kicked it back to the Cultural Council. We kind of put something together, got the Whittier Home involved, and the rest is history. We're on our 4th Poet Laureate. So,
And we thank you very much
and every day when I
for doing what you did.
think about it, I say, I did that!
Yes.
15 minutes is a long time.
Well, you'll do fine.
So, I'm the last of the last generation that doesn't discuss politics and religion and personal things. That said, I've voted Republican in every election since I could vote, except for this one. I voted straight Democrat across the board. So as I was thinking about this, I was also thinking about that, and I was going through Whittier's poems, and I found this one that seemed to hit a note. It's called For Righteousness' Sake. The age is dull and mean. Men creep, not walk, with blood too pale and tame to pay the debt they owe to shame. Buy cheap, sell dear, eat, drink, and sleep. Down-pillowed, deaf to moaning want, pay tithes for soul insurance, keep 6 days to mammon, 1 to cant. In such a time, give thanks to God. That somewhat of the holy rage with which the prophets in their age, on all its descent seeming trod, has set your feet upon the lie that man and ox and soul and clod are market stock to sell and buy. The hot words from your lips, my own, to caution trained might not repeat, but if some tares among the wheat of generous thought and deed were sown, no common wrong provoked your zeal. The silken gauntlet that is thrown in such a quarrel rings like steel. The brave old strife the fathers saw, for our freedom calls for men again, like those who battled not in vain for England's charter, Alfred's law. And right of speech and trial just wage in your name their ancient war, with venal counts and perjured trust. God's ways seem dark, but soon or late they touch the shining hills of day. The evil cannot brook delay, the good can well afford to wait. Give ermined knaves their hour of crime, ye have the future grand and great, the safe appeal of truth to time. So I had written, this is my first book of poetry I ever published. I'm now finishing numbers 19 and 20. So they're available on Amazon, along with the novel I wrote. So this, I had written a series of poems that were kind of like snapshots of like a theatrical production. So this one's called Murder Scene. So if you look at it through that lens, implements of a murder, the smoking gun, the silken rope, and other cliches. Watching a drama in which murder is the motive for carrying on with all manner of bad behavior. A dinner party where red wine is served in crystal glasses, light caught within the reddened sphere, casting the color of the wine in wide ovals on the floor. The wine appearing later in the part of bloodstains on the carpet, justifying its existence as incriminating evidence. So, of course, Lainie was the first Poet Laureate. She and I did a lot of things together. I had an open mic at that time that she frequented. I remember learning a song that I had to play, I play piano, behind her while she read this. And we were over at the bakehouse at the time, and then they changed hands, and my open mic ended up just being everywhere I could find a space to host us. So this is hers, and it's called Beyond the Storm. Today, after the storms, wind bothers the branches, sending ghostly veils of snow across the frozen forest. Juncos have returned. They chase each other around the balcony, searching for sustenance among the scattered seeds. The sun sparkles on the snow and dances on the rapid ripples of the fast-flowing stream. A bright winter day with all of the beauty this season can bring. She was so full of light. And I never had the pleasure of meeting Stephen Wagner, because my life at that point was very hectic with kids and jobs. But I started reading his timesheets, and at first I didn't get it. And as I learned more about him, things made sense, and I realized a lot of these were written through the lens of him looking at his own mortality. But this one appealed to me because I had a 6-month dishwasher saga and flooring and all kinds of stuff. Oh, by the way, it's just, ugh. But this is from Timesheets, Volume 3, Monday, January 29th, 2018. I didn't really repair the broken wheels on the upper track of the dishwasher until around 11 p.m. on Saturday. The wheels had been severed from their lock-tabbed pegs over the last 12 years. I'd partially repaired them before, weaving thin and malleable copper line through their center holes to lash them broadly to the outer cage, which worked well enough for a few years, here or there, but the wires always hardened and broke in the ends. You can only yank the rack out fully loaded, like the pull on a chainsaw so many hundreds of times before it requires further repair. And that was Saturday night. I finally put in the factory specified parts that I'd ordered and received and put aside some time ago. It all, of course, is of very little concern to anyone except for one small aspect. I couldn't have been happier to have finally done it. It was unbelievably satisfying to have it finally and properly repaired, functioning flawlessly like new. The only problem was that I had delayed and denied the entire process for so long. I don't even know why. I'm not sure if it's because I was unsure, probably, or I might have been depressed, yes, a little. But how could I forget the simple things that brought me such joy? You must look closely at your own entries, on your own timesheets, that you remember what you cannot afford to forget. I wish I had met him.
Yes, very unique.
But I feel like I've gotten to know him somewhat through his poetry.
Hats coming through.
Okay. Where are you going? Hat museum or to the restroom?
Hat Museum first, I think. There's 5 of them, so.
Okay.
So this is the one of the 2 I'm working on now. These are recent ones. I'll read a few and then I'll be done. This is called Pursuing the Deer Herd. Now I live up off of Whitehall and the deer come across our property a couple times a day, and sometimes I'm lucky enough to be out at the right time to see them. So this is called Pursuing the Deer Herd. The leaves that are dying on the trees. Not much color this year. Too much rain, not enough cold. Then too much cold, too fast. The leaves just browning up and falling off. We've learned the schedule of the deer, where to spy them, when next they will come around. Just beyond the grove of oak and birch, they graze at the edge of the neighbors' fields. The squirrels have been very busy this season. As we approach carefully, the crunch of fallen acorn like a pistol shot frightens them away. Oh well, perhaps another day. And this is, I wrote this back in March. Breathing lessons. Accidental first breath, slow shuffling forward. The darkness within the light, pushing always to be let out. Profound sorrow in a sea of joy. Learning to breathe again and again. Pervades the spirit, seeks to extinguish the light. In, out, slow exhale between a hiss and a sigh. Nothing's wrong is what is said aloud, but not whole, hollow. Getting up, one more time, and one more time, and one more time. The silent cry, the crushing weight, look harder, see me, I'm drowning. And this is called conundrum, and the first word of every line spells out the word conundrum. The first letter, excuse me. Can you take away my pain? Of course you can't. You never could. Never mind, I'll do it myself. Usually that's how it goes. Not to say you haven't tried. Definitely gave it your best shot. Really, what I'm trying to say is, underneath it all, behind the self-constructed walls, my sorrow is subject only to myself. Can't you dry my tears, or take away the weight of years? Nothing gained ever came cheap. Unfortunate, we've come up empty. Nothing lost could bear the cost, details blurred by time's passage. Rather burn in hell with you, unless, instead, we're heaven-bound. Maybe we're just not meant to know.
Thank you. Does anybody need a cake break or anything?
Yeah, we got 4 minutes. Could've read another one.
We can't get too far ahead of ourselves.
Have another drink?
Yes, you,
There's bottled water there if anybody wants water.
bottled water, cider.
Is there a bar around here?
Is there a bar around? Right, you need a drink?
Yes.
Do you serve,
Before I read, I always need a drink.
you don't have pizza and poetry?
Yes, that's true.
After John discovered that poets really have an affinity for food. It works. Now, Peter had a bio for you that was a lot longer than what I had room to put in there. And so one of the lines that he wrote was that you had, after you, when you were starting up poetry and pizza, pizza and poetry, that you had discovered that poets really like food.
Well, that's what at first got them there.
Yes. What's next? Okay, program
Okay, John Burciaga is
here.
next.
You're up. That's why you wanted to know whether if there was a bar around. Well, maybe the cider's kind of turning hard now, so yeah.
Whatever.
Whatever.
Yes, thank you. All of you who are involved in this wonderful place. We cannot forget our great poets. And what better way than to have the home and museum of one of the New England's household poets. The one I'm going to read of Whittier's, poetry never rises higher in our estimation than when it is courageous. Daniel Webster was an incredibly impressive man. He was a representative and a senator, and he wanted to be president. He had deep-set eyes underneath a very dark brow, and a voice that was incredible, because when he would speak outdoors, and you know how a voice just goes up into the sky, into the ether, when you speak outdoors, they said he could be heard before crowds of 4,000 and 5,000 from in the back row standing. He was formidable, and when he joined in with Southern interests to support the fugitive slave law of 1850, Whittier went after him. And this is what he said: I have edited this poem called Ichabod, which he used as a symbol of a fallen angel. So fallen, so lost, the light withdrawn which once he wore, the glory from his great hairs gone for evermore. O dumb be passion's stormy rage, when he who might have lighted up and led his age falls back in night. Let not the land once proud of him insult him now, nor brand with deeper shame his dim, dishonored brow. Of all we loved and honored, naught save power remains, a fallen angel's pride of thought, still strong in chains. All else is gone, from those great eyes the soul has fled. When faith is lost, when honor dies, the man is dead.
Nice.
He wrote those lines where he said, of all we loved and honored, nothing save power remains. He thought that possibly Webster would go on to be president. 2 years later, Webster was dead. He knew that he could not run for president because of his support of the fugitive slave law. That was a great moment in world poetry, I must say. I did some studying of characters, historical characters, and literary characters this summer. Hamlet, Mona Lisa. I even did a poem that included both the entertainer Pink and the color pink. And then there's another one about someone who over 3 million years ago in Ethiopia decided to stand upright. And because the Beatles song was current about 50 years ago, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, the scientists dubbed her Lucy. You may recall that. And everybody seems to know about Lucy, but they don't know what happened to her. And this poem is about that, and it's called I Love Lucy. Lucy from so long ago, 3 million years or so, Lucy whom we all should know, who made us who we are. If the God of our imagination rubbed dirt of early ground and breathed into her maw and breast the breath of life, if such were, all thereafter failed her. She was not among the mighty, but of the cringing ones in peril of vile and vicious neighbors. Her tiny form no match for predator or false protection, or meanness of the early world from which she came, a pit of peril all too well known. No dizzy dame, this one of early fame, but with a depth of mind did what the mighty overlooked, who overrated shambling on all fours. She chose to be upright and equipoise, that yet in time could not her save. Oh, Lucy, how dauntless you were for that, daring that denied by others, such enterprise in one so young who was among the least of them. And though young and smart, was prey to them that owned the earth by dint of size and strength. Her hope was in the timber tall that harbored those with talent of ascent, to where she climbed at night that sleep might come to stay and give her rest to live another day. She and I, a couple odd would make, but in her time I would have loved her mind, held by brain 1/3 of mine. But courage is commensurate, and she decidedly a genius of the past. Still fate takes many forms, and they who know what our long gray line can undergo and stand took her tiny bones, comprising less than half her frame, and from her shattered joints assessed that she, at 15 years and less than 4 feet tall, feet first, fell 9 times her meager height from her perch of safety presupposed. A brief half-century ago, her fragmented frame was found that tells her story well, and ours, who she was and who we are. How the ages and aptitudes spun out, and how and why she's our most beloved, the one who broke the mold and upright stood, and forever stands the tallest of us all.
That's very nice.
I wrote 2 poems within a couple of years, one of them most recently. And I titled them both Dirt of Redemption because somehow that title seemed to fit both of them. Last year, up in Vermont, there was a sustainable garden. Vermont's full of sustainable gardens. And there was a challenge sent out to poets, and I go up there a lot. And they want us to come to the garden, to walk around in silence, and after a while sit down and write a poem. And this was what I came up with. Dirt of Redemption, a poem of gratitude. I came upon a garden of delights, by true confession, a garden, quiet miracles, practicing resurrection. Where the ordinary are special creations, I drink tea of warming mint among its neighbors of garlic scape. We who look upward for inspiration must here look down. Things abundant about our feet await our eyes and appetites. May we too be so generous as to grow in ways that nourish others. Here, plant our feet in soil that grows us, become a miracle of service, that they may eat our lives and its poetry and become their delirious existence. Pray that we may be a garden of delightful miracles, our bodies holy dirt. The other one I wrote just after the events of the previous week, also called The Dirt of Redemption. I think you'll tell what I'm saying. This bath of cleansing rain, please erase the soil of the former day. Purify my pores of poison that is political, and from all that is inimical to hopes and health. The garden I've grown rubbed me sore from toil, meant to bring a joyful harvest to feed my soul and other souls. But this tarnish won't go away. I fear it's here another day, and as I look ahead, is it best to pray that misery be only mine and I a savior to my kind? No, this dirt is hard to clean when men and outcomes are so mean, and it's hard to keep my mind so sane and hold my neighbor not in disdain. Or I'll become like him another way, and when I'm old and gray, who will want my ugly disposition and my captious inquisitions on them and their undeserving young? The garden awaits my hands and sweat. Gardens too know intimidation, but tolerate no condemnation. They wait for loving care to come in promising silhouette, to take a chance on life or death, the outcome with bated breath. And like my shower rain, life-giving drops will bring growth again, and this time I'll know it's more than hope and work that bring a glad refrain on a hopeful city on a hill. The answer lays not in the soil. Dirt is faithful and forever. The power is also in ourselves. So when weathered and wounded, take a breath. The future awaits our immortality.
Very nice.
Last one is what I wrote for a recent anniversary, 21 years anniversary. It's called Love and Roses. I get a little emotional when I even think about it, let alone try to read it. My roses, whose threat is winter, last unto November, though flowers hardier have long since spent. True, my blossoms grow together, though elder blooms lend their heads to sad remove, so others live, that sun and water before the new. Yet all endure the loss that engenders gifts of life, till at winter's sure behest all lie down in patient slumber, till spring arouse from dormant rest. Such is my love, given to what mortals own, the briefest breath to come as others go, and go as others come. But in the sweetest interim is a glow that ought never die, but does and will, yet leaves a thought that's immortal still, a thought that will keep this heart of mine alive, despite death's December chill. Why this rare gift is mine, I'll never know. Why earth and time bestows this treasure till our eyes will someday close. Though this is sure, the gift was an eternal rose. Thank you.
Okay, Matt, are you ready?
Sure. All right, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. So I'd like to begin this segment with a poem by John Greenleaf Whittier called The River Path. No birdsong floated down the hill. The tangled bank below was still. No rustle from the birchen stem, no ripple from the water's hem. The dusk of twilight round us grew. We felt the falling of the dew. For from us, ere the day was done, the wooded hills shut out the sun. But on the river's farther side, we saw the hilltops glorified, a tender glow exceeding fair, a dream of day without its glare. With us the damp, the chill, the gloom, with them the sunset's rosy bloom. While dark, through willowy vistas seen, the river rolled in shade between. From out the darkness where we trod, we gazed upon those hills of God, whose light seemed not of moon or sun. We spake not, but our thought was one. We paused as if from that bright shore beckoned our dear ones gone before, and stilled our beating hearts to hear the voices lost to mortal ear. Sudden our pathway turned from night, the hills swung open to the light. Through their green gates the sunshine showed, a long slant splendor downward flowed. Down glade and glen and bank it rolled. It bridged the shaded stream with gold. And borne on piers of mist allied, the shadowy with the sunlit side. So, prayed we, when our feet draw near, the river dark with mortal fear, and the night cometh chill with dew. O Father, let thy light break through. So let the hills of doubt divide, so bridge with faith the sunless tide. So let the eyes that fail on earth on thy eternal hills look forth, and in thy beckoning angels know the dear ones whom we've loved below. Whittier was a man of great faith, and I believe that faith is what helped him persist in the face of opposition. And he encouraged others to do the same, as evidenced in this next poem I'm going to read, called Don't Quit. And I'll just say that if any of you have taken a walk along our Riverwalk trail here in Amesbury, you may have come across a line from this poem etched on 2 park benches. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile, but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is strange with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns, and many a failure comes about when he might have won had he stuck it out. Don't give up though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the clouds of doubt. And you can never tell just how close you are. It may be near when it seems so far. So stick to the fight when you're hardest hit. It's when things seem worst that you must not quit.
You may not have been the author of that. There's some discussion.
And Whittier was influenced by the ideas of transcendentalism, which, among other things, believes in the fact that the natural world is divine. So he expresses this in this next poem I'm going to read, called The Worship of Nature. The harp at nature's advent strung has never ceased to play. The song the stars of morning sung has never died away. And prayer is made and praise is given by all things near and far. The ocean looketh up to heaven and mirrors every star. Its waves are kneeling on the strand, as kneels the human knee. their white locks bowing to the sand, the priesthood of the sea. They pour their glittering treasures forth, their gifts of pearl they bring, and all the listening hills of earth take up the song they sing. The green earth sends its incense up from many a mountain shrine. From folded leaf and dewy cup she pours her sacred wine. The mists above the morning rills rise white as wings of prayer. The altar curtains of the hills are sunset's purple air. The winds with hymns of praise are loud, or low with sobs of pain. The thunder organ of the cloud, the dropping tears of rain. With drooping head and branches crossed, the twilight forest grieves, or speaks with tongues of Pentecost from all its sunlit leaves. The blue sky is the temple's arch, its transept earth and air, the music of its starry march, the chorus of a prayer. So nature keeps the reverent frame with which her years began, and all her signs and voices shame the prayerless heart of man. I myself have been influenced by the idea of the divinity of nature. So I'd like to share one of my own poems that I call The Awakening. I was pushed off a cliff and expected to fly, but I did not have any wings. And as I descended, expecting to die, I considered a great many things. I thought of the people who raised me with love, in particular my mom and dad. They did everything so that I'd rise above and give the world all that I had. I thought of my teachers, professors, and mentors who taught me to learn and create. They groomed me for such a dramatic ascent, for they knew I was going to be great. I thought of the goals and the work left unfinished, the promises left unfulfilled. The seeds I had planted, their value diminished, by acres of fields left untilled. Oh, how did this happen? Where did I go wrong? What was it that led to my falling? Had I run out of time? Had I waited too long? Was it too late to find my true calling? Then, in a panic, my voice I did throw. Save me, God, was my desperate plea. And echoing back, I heard someone say, no, it was I who asked you to save me. Why did you try to go into the sky? I am not in the darkness of space. I am here in the water and soil, for I am supporting the whole human race. I fashioned mankind for a lofty endeavor to keep my creation alive, to maintain this world as a refuge forever, where all living creatures might thrive. I instructed my people to serve and protect this biosphere I had begotten. For a while I was treated with love and respect, but now I feel I've been forgotten. When you get back to Earth, I've just one thing to ask, that you treat it with love and with care. For this you were made, and I gave you this task. For you, my dear one, are my prayer. I realized that this was a wake-up call, for I was asleep, it would seem. I felt great relief, for although I may fall, I know I can't die in a dream. I awoke to discover my life had been spared, with one very important condition. I had to be willing and fully prepared to devote myself to my true mission. I resolved to make good on the promise I'd made, this great planet I vowed to preserve, and see that a whole new foundation be laid for a future our children deserve. This mission that I was assigned at my birth bears a message all humans must learn. Remember that you were brought forth from the earth, and to the earth you must return. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to read a poem written by Lainie Senechal. So Lainie wrote this poem by constructing together comments made by attendees at the annual Amesbury Block Party in June of 2016. This poem is called Amesbury Days. Amesbury. It's a good town. It's a great town. Quiet, peaceful, small town community feel. Friendly people who know you. A place to relax and refuel. Eclectic and diverse. Grand folks, great schools, convenience stores and institutions, and a river runs right through it. Amesbury, a good town, a great town, People come from far and near, like Indiana or even Falmouth. Goodwins and Hoyts arrived here early. Others followed over the years. Some got their start here and never leave, for 44 years or even 6 generations. Settle on Sanborn Terrace, Market, Main, or Friend Street, and a river runs right through it. Amesbury, a good town, a great town, where there's always stuff to do. Dine at restaurants, a favorite. Spend time downtown, so close some can walk there. Pick strawberries at Cider Hill. Kayak Lake Gardner or Attitash. Observe fireflies at Camp Kent. Birdwatch at Woodson Farm. Hike up Old Poe Hill. Celebrate at a block party. And watch a river that runs right through it. Amesbury, a good town, a great town. We keep our history alive. The Carriage and Bartlett Museums. The Whittier Home, of course. Picturesque river and water front scenes. So quaint it looks European. And a river runs right through it. Amesbury, where water embraces the place. Swimming and boating nearby, from rushing falls to quiet ponds. The sound of powwows flow, something loved by all. It has some things old and some things new. More ice cream arrived downtown, where we can contemplate our inner cycle, our life in this piece of paradise. A good town, a great town, quiet, peaceful, small town community feel, and a river runs right through it. How are we doing for time?
Well,
Plenty?
Got under 5 minutes.
You got 6 minutes.
Yeah. I have time. I'd like to read one of my early poems. So I make my living as a computer programmer and data analyst. So when I was first writing poetry, sometimes I kind of drew upon that. So I used computer logic to inspire the form of this poem. But the poem is really about finding unity in a divided world. So, I wrote this 5 years ago, but it seems like a good time to bring it out again. This poem is called Binary. 0 or 1, day or night, yes or no, black or white, male or female, straight or gay, career or family, work or play, introvert or extrovert, quiet or loud, verbose or concise, humble or proud, practical or aesthetic, pretty or smart, emotion or logic, science or art, improvisation or protocol, impulse or plan, rigid or flexible, allow or ban, innovation or tradition, future or past, new or experienced, slow or fast, conservative or liberal, young or old, gentle or tough, cautious or bold, friends, not foes, peace, not war, love, not hate, and not or. Thank you very much. Do I have more time, or?
Well, what time does it say over there?
1:11. We usually have to take a
4
4-minute
minutes.
break. Yep.
Another 4 minutes.
Thank you very much.
So nobody wants a bottle of water or brownie or
Maybe I can welcome to
cookie or...
I'd just like to say that I didn't have your information how to reach you, but I wish you'd come and read at Poetry and Pizza.
He's probably always working.
I am always working.
Yeah.
Are you?
4 minutes.
Okay, so you want to be working.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But anyhow, if I can get your information,
I
Somebody else is
tempted you.
keeping me company.
I tempted you with the brownies and cookies, right? Put together the program. I kept changing my mind. And so I have more poems here than are even listed on this. First I have to get up, get my decrepit old body up off the floor. So in the program, by the way, I'm Chris Bryant, and I was the president of the Whittier Home Association for 8 years, and so this feels like my second home. During those 8 years, sometimes it felt like my first home. But anyway, I have spent countless hours here, along with my husband Peter, who's in the back and will be reading after Mr. Wiley. So, as far as a poem of Whittier's, I had planned to read one called The Pumpkin. But with the weather the way it's been the past couple of days, excuse me, I decided on another poem, which is one of my favorites, but it was also one of Lainie Senechal's favorites. And whenever she had to read a poem of Whittier's, this was the one that she chose. And it's called The Frost Spirit. He comes, the frost spirit comes. You may trace his footsteps now on the naked winds and the blasted fields and the brown hills' withered brow. He has smitten the leaves of the gray wild trees where their pleasant green came forth, and the winds which follow wherever he goes have shaken them down to earth. He comes, the frost spirit comes, from the frozen Labrador, from the icy bridge of the northern seas, which the white bear wanders o'er, where the fisherman's sail is stiff with ice, and the luckless forms below, in the sunless cold of a lingering night, into marble statues grow. He comes, the frost spirit comes, on the rushing northern blast, and the dark Norwegian pines have bowed as his fearful breath went past. With an unscorched wing he has hurried on, where the fires of Hecla grow, on the darkly beautiful sky above, and the ancient ice below. He comes, the frost spirit comes, and the quiet lake shall feel the torpid touch of his glazing breath, and the ring of the skater's heel. And the streams which danced in the broken rocks, or the sang for the leaning grass, shall bow again to their winter chain, and in the mournful silence pass. He comes, the frost spirit comes. Let us meet him as we may, and turn with the light of the parlor fire his evil power away. And gather close the circle round when the firelight dances high, and laugh at the shriek of the baffled fiend, and sigh as his sounding wing flies by.
Wow, you're a great reader.
So that was my Whittier poem. This poem is a poem that, I don't know why I have feedback.
Oh, you're getting feedback?
Well, I thought I was. I heard some ringing. Maybe it's just in my ears. That happens these days. Lainie, just after she became the first poet laureate of Amesbury, doesn't anybody else hear that ringing? I guess not. Okay. It's just kind of bothersome. She wrote this poem, and it actually hangs here out in the old kitchen. And this poem, like I said, is framed and hanging out around to the left of the fireplace in the old kitchen. And it's called To Mr. Whittier by Lainie Senechal, first Poet Laureate of Amesbury, 2016 to 2018. Mr. Whittier, I think of you as my neighbor, strolling down Friend Street, past your home or Market Street or Main. You greet me with the tip of your hat, and then you stride forward to the outskirts of town to walk in quiet contemplation of our abundant natural beauty. Our preferences are similar to be among the local folks, enjoy a simple life. Amesbury, our comfortable home, with a love for the nature that surrounds us, the rivers, Powwow and Merrimack, the lakes, Attitash and Gardner, the flora and fauna of the hills and the fields. We note the aspects of each season. Appreciate both the rising and the setting. You and I observe the fall of light as it sparkles in rivers, shimmers on lakes' surfaces, ignites hilltops, or the golds and crimsons flicker through. The leaves onto the woodland paths, or maybe the trail of moonlight along the restless shore. We vacation in the same spots, the beaches, Plum Island, Salisbury, and Hampton, enjoy a respite on the Isles of Shoals, relax in the mountains of New Hampshire, the Whites and the Monadnocks. At heart, you were a country boy, deeply connected to the rhythms of our New England life. You were fearless in your righteous convictions, set us on a higher path. God always walked with you, the wonders of nature, a reflection of heaven, glorious beams. Today, I follow in your footsteps, but your stride is much longer than mine. You appear in the clouds above. I am committed to the journey you began, one that we both understand. And another poem by Lainie, one of the first poems that I ever heard her read, and it's rather whimsical. And Lainie lived in a house on Lake Attitash for most of her life until back maybe, when did she move? 4 years ago, she moved up to Maine, New Hampshire, to be closer to her. Anyhow, she lived out on Lake Attitash. We have an event here called the Tapestry of Voices, and after the Tapestry of Voices was over, Lainie had everybody over to her house for wonderful food that she prepared along with Harris Gardner. Everybody here probably knows Harris Gardner. Anyway, lots of memories went with Lainie, and this was one of the first poems, like I said, that I ever heard her read. And it's called Toast, and it's from a visit to Mill 77. In the antique shop, photos of my hometown from days of childhood, toys I played with, furniture we owned, over speakers, songs of love and longing from the 60s, waves of nostalgic overcome my life is now vintage. I spot a silver toaster, a familiar family artifact from our first apartment, Market Street, Amesbury. Exposed coils in the center glowed a fiery red when plugged in. Silver cages on either side for the toast. No signal when done, just direct current from wall to bread, waking up mornings to the sound of Dad scraping dry surfaces. Thankfully, he only burned up the breakfast, not down the house. When we arrived at the table, he would cheerily announce, "Here's your toast. The dark parts will help you whistle." That's what Lainie had, this little smile that was kind of whimsical is the only word I can think of for it, and some of her poetry that comes through very strongly. Now I'm going to read you a poem that Stephen Wagner wrote about the Whittier Home, and it's called The Whittier Home. It is good to stand in the home. The weight of the objects of the past hang in the air and bring you there if you want it to. You can feel it. The paintings practically whisper to you. And everyday objects, too, are fascinating in and of themselves. The old brick hearth with all of the compartments for warming and cooking various things. And the death mask, the cast of his hand,
Those cannot but move you, they cannot but set your mind ablaze. Yet for me the pinnacle is the cane on the wall, made from the wooden splintered wreckage of Pennsylvania Hall, which they burned down around him, but he got past them, both then and now. And he walked defiantly on, with a survivor's stick of decency stolen from the wretched hearts of those who would let their own spirits sour in darkness. He would beat them back in writing, simply by showing them their own savagery. He supported us all with moral strength when moral strength was needed. He led us forward, and he left us this cane, that we may lean on it and rest if we briefly feel defeated. But there are still steps to be taken. There are still things to be done. No wrongs are righted without the devotion of someone. And that poem is framed on the wall, right up there. And what am I doing for time? 4 minutes. Here we go, 4 minutes. I'm going to read one more by Stephen, and I think I can do it in less than 4 minutes. And this was an occasional poem that he wrote, which was Stephen's forte. He wrote occasional poetry all over town. Everywhere he would go, something he would see, there would be a poem about it. This is an occasional poem for Chris and Peter, and it was received on 7/26/2020. And Stephen died, it was 2021 that he died. Aha, I know that lady. A funny thing about preservation is that those who engage in it may not preserve their own energy, as there is much to be done. No problem. While accomplishments and achievements often invoke the many, they involve the many, they are often only really arrived at by the disproportionate work of the few. Case in point, the Whittier Home. It still holds the grace, weight, beauty, and treasures of the days of abolition. It is no accident that it has survived. For the last quarter of a century, while groups and committees have helped support and guide, it is really the efforts of its primary caregivers, Chris and Peter Bryant. As dedicated as lighthouse keepers, they have maintained the light. Every shingle that encases the home bears their names, though the words may not be seen by the casual eye. For anyone who has paid attention, it is hidden in plain sight. Thank you.
Big piece of mic here.
It is, but it works well.
It does work well. I'm Tom Wiley. I'm from Haverhill. And I thought Haverhill and Amesbury have a great deal in common. Starting with the man behind me on the mantle. How many of you have been to the Haverhill, the Whittier homestead in Haverhill?
Birthplace. I've ridden by it.
Oh dear, you all gotta go. We have a lot of readings here. He was born there December 17th, his birthday is coming up, in 1807. But the roots go much further than that. His great-grandfather, Thomas Whittier, came over from England in 1680. And he built that house that became his farm. And then Whittier's father ran the farm, but John Greenleaf didn't like farming. He moved on to other things. But if you do get to Haverhill, excuse me, I'm eating up some time here talking about this, but
Fine.
these little facts are in my head. Where he went to school was about a mile up the road. There's a marker there. But there's a Walnut Cemetery another mile up the hill where Lydia Ayres is buried. And one of his most famous poems is School Days, about Lydia Ayres. I didn't choose to read that one, but anyhow, I'm going to read two of his poems. The first being Haverhill. And what's interesting about this is it was first read on July 2nd, 1890, at the celebration of the 250th anniversary of the city of Haverhill, which was founded in 1640. He was 83. He died only 2 years later, in 1892. So this is 31 stanzas. So if you don't mind staying for 3 hours, I'll read all of them. I'm going to use my editorial discretion and probably read about 3 or 4 stanzas, okay? Thank you for your patience. Haverhill. O river winding to the sea, we call the old time back to thee. From the forest paths and waterways, the century-woven veil we raise. The voices of the day are dumb, unheard it sounds that go and come. We listen through long lapsing years, the footsteps of the pioneers. Gone steepled down in cultured plain, the wilderness returns again, the drear untrodden solitude, the gloom and mystery of the wood. Once more the bear and panther prowl, the wolf repeats his hungry howl, and peering through his leafy screen, the Indian's copper face is seen. We see their rude-built huts beside, grave men and women anxious-eyed, and wistful youth remembering still dear homes in England's Haverhill Hill.
Oh.
Now, I don't believe he was from Haverhill, England, but it's true that's where the name came from, like everything else that we have around here. Pardon me, John, I'm skipping over a few stanzas here. That hamlet now a city is, its log-built huts are palaces. The woodpath of the settler's cow is traffic's crowded highway now. And far and wide it stretches still, along its southward sloping hill, and overlooks on either hand a rich and many watered land. And gladdening all the landscape fair, as Pisson was to Eden's pair, a river to its valley brings the blessings of its mountain springs. I had way with words, didn't he? You were talking, a long time ago. And I'm going to go to the next to the last stanza. This is the last stanza. Earth shall be near to heaven when all that serves man from man shall fall. For here or there salvation's plan alone is love of God and man. O dwellers by the Merrimack, the heirs of centuries at your back, still reaping where you have not sown, a broader field is now your own. Hold fast your Puritan heritage, but let the free thought of the age its light and hope and sweetness add to the faith that fathers had. Adrift on time's returnless tide, as waves that follow waves we glide. God grant we leave upon the shore some waif of good it lacked before, some seed or flower or plant of worth, some added beauty to the earth, some larger hope, some thought to make the sad world happier for its sake. As tenants of uncertain stay, so may we live our little day, that only grateful hearts shall fill the homes we leave in Haverhill Hill. So, along that same theme, what we share between Haverhill and Amesbury is, of course, the beautiful Merrimack River. My house in the Bradford section is only a quarter mile from the river, and the water's very special. I know you have the Powell River runs through it, but it's the shoreline of the Merrimack that I think matters to all of us. Barefoot Boy, here we are. So this was written, The Barefoot Boy, written in 1855 when he was 48. Again, he has more stanzas than I can possibly go through, but I'm reading this because after I read a few of my own, I'm going to read one by Haverhill's Poet Laureate, Dan Spears. which I think is quite interesting. It ties into the theme of the Barefoot Boy. Blessings on thee, little man, barefoot boy with cheek of tan, with thy turned-up pantaloons and thy merry whistled tunes, with thy red lip redder still, kissed by the strawberries on the hill, with the sunshine on thy face, though thou torn brim's journey grace, from my heart I give thee joy. I was once a barefoot boy. Prince thou art, the grown-up man, only is Republican. Let the $1,000,000 ride, barefoot trudging at its side, thou haste more than he can buy. In the reach of ear and eye, outward sunshine, inward joy, blessings on thee, barefoot boy. Oh, for barefoot's time of June, crowding years in one brief moon, when all things I heard or saw, me, master, waited for. I was rich in flowers and trees, hummingbirds and honeybees. For my sport the squirrel played, plied the smothered mole his spade. For my taste the blackberry came, purpled over hedge and stone. Laughed the brook at my delight, through the day and through the night. Whispering at the garden wall, talk with me from fall to fall. Mine the sand-rimmed pickled pond, mine the walnut slopes beyond, mine on bending orchard hills, apples. Still, as my horizon grew, larger still my riches too. All the world I saw or knew seemed a complex Chinese toy, fashioned for a barefoot boy. If you've ever been to the Haverhill Library, anybody been to the Haverhill Library?
Yes.
You know that there's a great waterfall in the middle. It's sort of a wishing well. People throw money in it, and there's a statue of the barefoot boy there. So,
And we do have a beautifully illustrated book here by Lisa Greenleaf, who is a very indirect descendant of Whittier, the Whittier family. And she does beautiful work, and it's
yeah, gave me a little piece of history I'm going to share again. If you don't mind, I'll throw it out there. Why not? He didn't want to be a farmer, and when his father died, I'm guessing somewhere around 1832, 33, he was probably 27 or 28. They moved to Haverhill because he had an aunt that lived here, I believe. And what's more important, his deep Quaker faith, and the Friends Meeting House is just down the street here. So that was a real big part of him. So I'm going to shift gears here, and I have two of my poems. One, this is a maiden reading. This is very personal poetry. I suffered a loss about a year ago, a very deep loss, and I've written about it, but of course I've never read anything publicly. But now it's been a year, I feel like I can write something about it. In fact, there's a line from Mary Gaucher, I don't know if you know her, she's a singer-songwriting, said, "A year is nothing when you've lost someone you love." So this is entitled, and it falls into the seasonal change, Summer to Fall. Pale green, yellow, orange, and brown, season's new colors visible all around. Happens no matter who sees, feels or not, in awe I sense the present of nature's plot. Time and change has shifted since that day. Tears, dreams, memories, regret all stay. In your apartment I scan items that remain, knowing without you, life is never the same. How to live with loss that won't go away eats at me, no matter work, food, dress, or play. I talk as gently as I can, seeking to hold back the pain, fearful, careful as to whom and if I will say your name. As the season shifts, I know so too will I, and wish for feeling closer to you with the wonder of being alive. Thank you for your patience on that. Now I'm going to shift gears completely again. This is one of mine. If you've lived with somebody for 45 years, you see each other a lot in the mornings. And this is called Good Morning Blues. Good morning, how are you? Do you really want to know? Don't answer, but since you ask, I itch all over. Eczema drives me crazy. Ointment not much help. Can't stop using the back scratcher. Not smart, but feels damn good. Didn't sleep well despite the gummies. My usual morning headache. Took 2 Advil with coffee. Meds need 3 refills. Too early to call. Must count out my daily pills. It's 70 in here, but I'm cold. Scooped more pellets to crank up the stove. Should warm up in a few hours. Is that enough? Do you really want to hear about my stomach issues? 2 doctor appointments this week. Oncologist on Tuesday. Dermatologist on Wednesday. I'll get through this. And anyway, how are you? Okay, I'm going to read a poem that Dan Spears can't be here. And again, I have to thank Lainie and Amesbury because we didn't have a poet laureate, and I asked, how did you do it? How did you do it? We talked quite a bit. I didn't know that Byron had such a great road.
Brian.
Right, yeah, a great road. Although I've read with some of his open mic meetings. So, copy and paste, and I did what he did in Haverhill, and we have Dan Spears as a poet laureate. He's really wonderful. He's also a native Cherokee. He speaks the language, and he grew up in an Indian school in Tennessee, East Tennessee. He's seen a lot. So this is commemorating Whittier's Barefoot Baby Boy this weekend. This was first read at a Whittier reading in the shed across from the Whittier Home on Whittier Street in Haverhill. This is entitled The Barefoot Baby, My Great-Grandson. Greetings to you, little man, newly born, cheeks not yet tan, with your turned-up nose, bright eyes, every moment a new surprise. Never lose, that is my advice, curiosity and wonder suffice. To shower thoughts on your face, to fill to brim your jaunty grace. You, great son, give me joy, for once I was a barefoot boy. No prince am I, the grown-up man, wizened and wrinkled, an elder span. Yes, today I ride as others do, for ease and speed and something new. Now 8 decades come and gone, since barefoot I roamed along, seeing a world I cannot see, the fields, the stream, the old oak tree. Outward sunshine, inward joy, it's still true, barefoot baby boy. Long ago, when I was a lad, in summer, rustic, mostly clad, I had no need for pendants rules, with my trust in nature's schools. Through whispering forests I did wend, every creature a forever friend. Beneath the canopy, sunlight dabbled, its sunlight patterns left and quick twigs craggled. Watching bees in search of nectar, how diligent each collector. Sometimes a breeze restless, twitching, sometimes still, quietly bewitching, as if listening for tranquility from crows that lack civility, and the riskability of mockingbirds with chatter that resounds like words. Long gone the days that time did seize, when my boy's heart was at ease. The cuts and scrapes and bruises blue, the sassafras bark I loved to chew, the berries I picked between the thorns, the sweetness of those honeysuckle horns, the crisp use of apples fresh picked, how marshmallows are gooey on a stick. Many years now past my life has spun, so many battles, some lost, some won. My sons now had sons of their own, seeds and cycles of life fully grown. Still, somehow, that boy me remains, dirt streaked feet with grassy stains, seasons turning, the years flown past, never knowing which is the last. For you, my dear baby boy, this lore, savor each moment nature has in store. The world will grow and foster change, both the past and future always strange. For boys both then and now who dream, where hope takes flight and faces beam. So much to see, my gift to you is memories. And day by day as you grow tall, no barefoot days still live in all. Yes, you too can know the joy ere it passes, barefoot boy. So
Yes, he is.
I'm going to close with another short one of mine, a little bit on the theme of in rendition. This is, because the season's here, it's called Holiday Survival, but could be called Election Survival, I guess, I don't know. This was written several years ago, but I read it this time every year, so thank you for your forbearance. Holiday Survival. Mute the phone, garage the car, post a message, no one home. Avoid the stores, throw out the mail, take long walks, do the chores, hide the credit cards, stop all news reports, order food online, read the bards. Take this advice and you'll be fine, with far less debt and a happy mind.
Well, some of these have been a hard act to follow, haven't they? They really have. I'm going to read a poem that I think until about 2015 I didn't know Whittier. Well, I've heard of him, but I didn't really know him and thought his poems were probably a bit slow and boring. And then in 2015 my wife coaxed me to join the Whittier Home. And I came across this poem called In School Days. And In School Days was the most extraordinary poem I've ever read in my life, and I was immediately a Whittier fan. So, it starts off all very nice and light, and you just get caught at the end. In School Days. Still sits the schoolhouse by the road, a ragged beggar sleeping. Around it still the sumacs grow and blackberry vines are creeping. Within the master's desk is seen, deep wrapped by Muscar's official, the warping door, the battered seats, the jackknives carved initial. The charcoal frescoes on its wall, its doors worn silver betraying the feet that, creeping slow to school, went storming out to playing. Long years ago a winter sun shone over at its setting. I'm sorry I didn't say shone, I know you Americans say shone, but I like saying shone. Shone over at its setting, lit up its western window panes and low eaves icy fretting. It touched the tangled golden curls and brown eyes full of grieving of one who still her steps delayed when all the schools were leaving. For near her stood the little boy, her childish favour singled, his cap pulled low upon a face where pride and shame were mingled. Pushing with restless feet the snow to right and left he lingered, as restlessly her tiny hands the blue-checked apron fingered. She saw her lift her eyes, he felt the soft hands high caressing, and heard the tremble of her voice as if a fault confessing. I'm sorry that I spelt the word, I hate to go above you, because, the brown eyes lower fell, because you see, I love you. Still memory to a grey-haired man that sweet child face is showing. Dear girl, the grass is on her grave, have 40 years been growing. He lives to learn in life's hard school how few who passed above him lament their triumph and his loss like her, because they love him. So it's kind of made me really completely, well, it was the extent of love in that, and the fact that he's standing on the grave of the one he loved when he was 17. And blow me if I haven't gone and looked up the grave. That's the grave. And it's strange because when he was reading, when he's talking about the poem, he is standing there, which is pretty incredible. And I was amazed because I thought that might be hard to find, but I looked up the cemetery last week, and it's the Walnut Cemetery in Haverhill, and I hadn't a clue where to find it. So it was a little old lady, about 70, with a dog walking around, and I said, do you know where this is? And she started reciting school days to me then and there, which is just incredible. But it's a very, very new grave. All the old graves were sort of kind of falling to bits and all sorts of stuff. This looks like it's been put there about 5 years ago or less. So I'm trying to find out from the birthplace what happened. Somebody must have renovated it.
The old stone is nearby.
Tom knows.
Yes, gosh.
The old stone is right nearby, but it's all falling apart. They put this one up.
Oh, okay, great, good.
Lydia's there on the ground.
He's good. The next poem is The Captain's Well. And just as that first poem was a true story, this again is a true story. He was writing about his life and what was going on around him. And he just wrote a lot about the things that happened in Amesbury. In 1792, Valentine Bagley, an Amesbury seaman, was shipwrecked off Arabia and nearly died of thirst. He vowed that when he made it back home, he would dig a well for the passer-by so that nobody would suffer from the thirst that he had. He dug the well in 1796. And it's called the Captain's Well, and it's right by the middle school in Amesbury. And it's very important to Amesbury at the moment because the big house just behind there is 230 Main Street. And it's a vast house, it's actually a monstrosity. But it's probably the oldest house with the best illustration of how the architecture changed through the ages. You can sort of see about 5 different periods how it was built. And it's due to be knocked down in 9 months unless we do something. So the Amesbury Treasures people have clubbed together and given money to a fund to make a sign by the Captain's Well, to be put by the Captain's Well, to try and persuade them not to knock it down. The Captain's Well. From pain and peril, by land and main, the shipwrecked sailor came back again, and like one from the dead, the threshold crossed of his wandering home that had mourned him lost. Where he sat once more in his kith and kin, and welcomed all the neighbours in, but when the morning came, he called for a spade. I must pay my debt to the Lord, he said. Why did you here? Asked the passer-by. Is there gold and silver in the river nigh? No, he said, but under this sod is the blessed water, the wine of God. Water? The power was at your back, and right behind the Merrimac. And look you up and down, there's a well sweep on every door in town. True, he said, we all have wells of our own, but this well I dig for the Lord alone. Said the other, the soil is dry, you know, I doubt if a spring can be found below. You better consult before you dig some water witch with a hazel twig. No, wet or dry, I will dig it here, shallow or deep, if it takes a year. Now the poem is actually very long, so there's several pages of him being in the desert, because that was the sort of flashback from the end of this. And I'll carry on how he gets out of the desert in a moment. After a long trek through the desert, he arrived at the coast. Till I saw at last, through the coast hill's gap, a city held in a stony lap, the mosques and the domes of scorched muscats, and my heart leapt up with the joy thereat. For there was a ship at anchor lying, a Christian flag at its masthead flying, and sweetness of sounds to my homesick ear was my native tongue in the sailor's cheer. Now the Lord is thanked, I'm back again, where earth has springs and the skies have rain. And the well I promised by the open sea, I'm digging for him in Amesbury. His kindred wept, and his neighbours said, the poor old captain's out of his head. But morn to noon and noon to night, he toiled his task with a man and might. And when at last from the loosened earth, under his spade, the stream gushed forth, and fast he climbed to his deep well's brim, the water he dug for followed him. He shouted for joy, I have kept my word, and here is the well I promised to the Lord. And there's a little bit more after that, but it's that's enough to tell you what went on, and I've only got 15 minutes anyway, so here we go. The next poem is by me, and it's an apostrophe poem, which means I'm speaking to some inanimate thing as if it's a person. To the air. Hello out there. Are you the air? I can't see you, it isn't fair. But sometimes, if it's not too troubled, I see through water which you have bubbled. But this might not be true when it comes to pass. That water was from some silly arse. I know you there, you're in my head. 2 ways, I'm thinking, I'm breathing. And who am I really addressing as the air? Is it one molecule, or all that's there, enveloped all around the earth? There's big you are. I cannot stop. My find's so filled with liquid pop. And what is it your favourite thing? Do you like to feel the rush of spring, or howl in winter in the snow, and watch the trees sway to and fro? Perhaps you feel a lot of pain when you carry so much rain, and in the autumn or the fall, you hardly blow the leaves at all, but then on Sundays you get fussed and blast the world with leaves and dust. I used to sail a lot at sea. I knew you well when out at sea. You were as fresh as you could be, and so much fresher just for me. And once, when halfway out to France, you really gave a wicked glance, and blew your butt off, gale force 8. Yeeks, I was sailing, and I had no mate. What were you thinking? I might have bled, or even still, returned quite dead. So, do you think about what you do, and what your little mates are up to? I see you, nitro-oxy-fun. Oh, no I don't. And now I'm done. Now this is a rondo about one of my favourite friends, and you'll quickly tell what sort of friend it is. A dog never lies. There is no surprise that a dog never lies, whether at home or under the skies. When you are out walking, have you heard a dog talking? Perhaps not, but you know he's wise. When a dog is upset, he cries. A tear might fall, and then it dries. Your dog is never misleading. A dog never lies. A dog is full of joy, so time never flies, while sharing the sun and feeling the highs. If he gets hurt, he might be crying. The only sound is his quiet sighing. He will be true till the day he dies. A dog never lies. And I'm going to read two of Stephen's poems. He wrote a series of poems about the Amesbury treasures, which I'm rather involved with. That's the group of the Amesbury Historical Societies. And Stephen, number 1, is the Lowell's Boat Shop. And this is Stephen's words. They have done a lot at the shop over the years. Tremendous, many-numbered things. Simply existing for hundreds of years, not the least among them. And of course they've created tens and tens and tens and thousands of brilliantly built boats. That sounds like an awful lot, but yes. And there are many inventions and innovations of design, all manner of dories and skiffs among with others. These are not to be missed, as they are important. But what I think it's really all about are the children and adults it's taken under its wing, teaching and enriching, engaging, people of all ages and abilities. The very shop itself, a massive store of knowledge, on the high seas, engaging and releasing so many minds, and all of this, all the time, when underway. And the last poem is number 11 of the treasures, and it's Salisbury Point Station. And we had to close down in 2015 because essentially we ran out of building. We were not ejected, what do you call when you throw? Evicted, thank you, right, okay. Anyway, so in 2015 I happened to be evicted, and then I joined the Whittier Home, so you can see it's a bit,
You should tell
bit of a
them why
continuation.
you were evicted.
We were evicted because we were a big organisation with 4 members, about 70, and we had a vast storage space, floor space, which was where the brewery is at the bottom in Water Street in Amesbury, and it was, I don't know, 10 times as big as this room. And we paid $1 a month, which was a pretty good deal. But then they realised they could put the brewery in there. And so for a couple of years we existed with the brewery. And then they wanted to take more space, and that meant that we would only have 1 door. And if you're a train club, you can't have the public in if you've only got 1 door. And the big thing that we always used to do was the Christmas train show, and we couldn't do that again. So the main thing was preserving the station. And If we just let it fold and hadn't formally closed the organisation, the station wouldn't be insured, wouldn't be looked after, it would just fall down with nobody to care for it. So the Carriage Museum kindly stepped in and took over all our assets. And the station now belongs to the Carriage Museum. But it's great that it's still in the town. I mean, they don't seem to use it very much, but when we were there, every Saturday morning, we would be there and open up for the dog walkers, because all the dogs would come along and we had biscuits and water for the dogs, which was quite fun. So this is about Salisbury Point Station, and this is Stephen's little bit cynical view, I guess. I have been told that the Salisbury Point Station is to be removed from the list of local treasures. Actually, it wasn't, but never mind. The Historical Society that lovingly tended the station disbanded a few years ago because its members had grown too old. Hello. At this point, the tape ran out, so I had to re-record the last poem. Rather than you having to look at my face anymore, I'm going to show you something far more interesting, an extract from the Salisbury Point Station video. This will show you both the station and the train museum. You will not hear the usual commentary because I am reading. I'm reading Stephen Wagner's Salisbury Point Station poem. Number 11, Salisbury Point Station. I have been told that the Salisbury Point Station is to be removed from the list of local treasures. The Historical Society that lovingly tended the station disbanded a few years ago because its members had grown too old and too few to continue. The young had not been swayed to the station's care. And lastly, the funding. The funding was bare. The historical objects and artefacts that the station held were distributed as well as possible to local organisations and museums that could take them. But not everything could be saved, of course, and things were lost, to the great sorrow of those who had to witness it. The station was built 148 years ago in what was then another town, and it saw frenzied activity of papers and parts, mail, boats, hats, and all manner of other things during its active years of service. Then, when it had grown dormant, it was moved several times, sold to someone at one point for pocket change. It fell into disrepair, but was then magnificently restored, only to be vandalised and then restored again. It's remarkable to think it stands now in excellent repair, but shuttered and pretty much unused. It's remarkable to think of all that goes into preserving any physical thing over any real period of time, all the care and love, cover and protection that must be provided in an almost unbroken chain. The ceaseless need for caretakers to take care to protect that which we sometimes collectively forget is of value, lest we lose it, and only then remember the tremendous value that had been held within. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for visiting. This is the end of the Poem-a-Thon. We hope you enjoyed it. Many thanks to all the poets and contributors.